Hey everyone, thank you for joining me tonight. It's Christine here. I'm part of the C3 Stand devotional team. Just coming to you to continue speaking about our subject of the Jericho wall and breaking down how Jesus has broken down my Jericho wall. And so just bear with me, because as I was preparing this tonight, I had two ways I wanted to go, and one was the very logical, practical, everyone could relate to kind of a story, and then there was the one that I've chosen to go to, which is a little bit rawer for me. The fact that I didn't want to actually do it was a clear sign that this is clearly a war for me, that I think, God's just still chipping away, and I'm just so grateful to him for what he has done in my life. So, for those who have been listening to the previous devotionals, I think we've recapped and captured the story of the Wall of Jericho and what it was all about. But what it really represents for me is it's a faith in action story for me. It's about faith. It's about obedience. It's about knowing God's voice and stepping out in faith, and then watching God be victorious with his authority and his power in bringing down a wall. And so for me, I had really quite an interesting time reflecting on kind of what is my wall. And it's always a great thing doing these devotionals and just bearing your soul out there for the whole public. So it's an interesting journey, and it's a fantastic journey. It's been a great week for me. But when I think about a wall is something that divides, being something's on one side and then something's on the other side. And as people, when we've built walls around us, we may not have done it intentionally, but there's a reason why we put walls in front of us. And they usually can be to protect us, to isolate us, to just divide us from what we don't want to face or come across to. And so I was thinking about my wall, and what is that thing that divides me between me and something else, or me and God, more importantly. And sillily, I did ask my husband, Michael, what do you think is my wall? And word to the wise, don't discuss that with your husband or partner, because, that just leads to a whole different kind of discussion that maybe didn't need to be had. But anyway, it's all good. So I went down the road of, when did I start building my wall? And I started going back to my childhood. And basically my childhood wasn't a pretty one. It wasn't fantastic. It was a dysfunctional family, to say the least, riddled with mental health issues. And that's how we were raised in our family. It was very chaotic. It was quite a dark place. And I assure you, Jesus was not invited to come and live in that house. Now, we all went to Catholic schools. We all knew religion, but by no means did we have a relationship with Jesus. And the house was full of torment, and it was just not a loving house at all. And I remember many things happening, but one thing I remember quite constant in our family was this thing that we all had, was this sharp tongue. We had tongues like whips, that things would come out and they were said. And once they're said, you cannot unhear it. And then the sharpness of the tongue was to hurt. It said nasty things. It was cruel. And the intention was to make sure you felt that pain. And when you're a child, you don't know what to do with that kind of a pain. You don't know what to do with those kinds of insults. And whether they're true or not, in your little eyes, you're going, well, that's the truth. That's what I hear. And you believe it. You bring it into your world, and it resides and sits within you. So as humans, Psychology 101 here, as humans, when we're in a place of torment, trauma, or anything like that, bodies and brains go into fight, flight. They go into protective mode, or how do I survive in this situation? And for me, when I was a young child, I decided to go into the role of defiance. So there's two roles. You usually could be a people pleaser, where you want to keep the peace and keep people happy, or you can be defiant. And unfortunately, I went down the road of pure defiance. You see, I had no control over my situation, but I could choose to stand my ground and not buckle under the pressure. It didn't serve me any good. It actually caused me more problems than it was worth. But that was the only control mechanism I had in my life, was defiance. And with defiance, I built a wall, and I built a wall, and it got bigger, and it got bigger. And eventually, that defiance came into adulthood with me. And that wall started to separate me from people, disconnect me from humans, disconnect me from feelings and emotions. You can't build healthy relationships when you have this wall. And this characteristic kept following me into my adult life. And then as I got older, I started to see my defiance as, being strong and determined. And again, it didn't serve me any good, because now my defiance was very full of pride, on the border of arrogance. But again, that wall was keeping me safe. It was protecting me. It was keeping me enclosed and away. One of the common traits of someone that's quite defiant is the word no. No comes very quickly to my mouth. I admit to that. Very quickly, the first thing is no, because I'm not willing to put myself out there. I'm not willing to put myself on display. I'm not willing to see myself fail. So no, I'm just not going to go down that road. So you could only imagine that when I finally met God and brought him into my world, into my life, and I decided I'm going to give my life to Christ and let him have his way with me, you have no idea the things that came against me. So the enemy had me exactly where he wanted me. He wanted me sitting enclosed in this tight wall. Because when we build a wall around ourselves, we usually don't build a door in there to get ourselves out of it. And there's no miraculous go into adulthood and voila, I'm all healed and fantastic. No, it carries on with you unless some form of intervention is brought into your world. So I brought God into my world. He was my intervention. And then the enemy stepped it up. And I remember one night, and it was quite early in my Christian days, and my husband and I, we were going through quite a serious personal issue within our marriage. And the night I was lying there, and I had voices, and it felt like a million voices in my head, and they were screaming at me. They were yelling at me. The torment was so cruel. The words were mean, and it was every bit of insecurity or fear that I felt. They were reassuring me, that's the truth, that's the truth. And I remember it felt so loud in my head that I even looked at Michael and said, can you not hear what's happening in my head? And I was so suppressed by all of this noise that I couldn't even mutter anything. I couldn't get anything out except for one thing. I remember calling out saying, Jesus, where are you? I can't find you. And in that moment, a whisper came through, not a yell, a whisper. A voice came through and said, have faith. And in that split second, it went dead silent. It was quiet. I had this miraculous peace and serenity I have never felt in my life. And I knew in that very, very moment, I had heard God's voice. I knew God's voice. And in that moment, I believe with all my heart, he instilled the gift of faith in me. I would travel to the end of the earth for God. I have so much faith in him because I heard his voice. I know his voice, and I saw his authority. You see, that night, God's voice was a sword that pierced the heart of the enemy. God claimed me. He claimed me his daughter. And he said, no, she is mine. And she is none of those things that you say that she is. I believe with all my heart that is God's heart for each and every one of us as his children. And I'm not saying by any means I got it all together. Yes, I still have these walls. I still have defiance. Anyone that knows me well enough to know, yes, I do still have that defiance. But the difference is when I have these words or these thoughts or this defiance or this wall starts building up in me again, the enemy doesn't control it. He doesn't control my narrative anymore. See, I know God's voice. I know my voice, but I know God's voice. And the enemy has no control over that anymore. God has full authority. And I just want to encourage you that you've got to know from the bottom of my heart, there is nothing that is so bad, so sinful, so ugly that you can't go to God with it. He will always meet you where you're at. For me, His word is a sword. It can be a sledgehammer. It can knock down that wall. He can do it with a trumpet. He can do it with a whisper. The enemy knows his name. The waves and winds know his name. He has full authority over every situation. For us, we need to step out and call his name. He will answer, and he will bring an army with him, and he will fight the battle for you. I just encourage you, wherever your wall is, call it out to God. And I can absolutely assure you, he will bring that wall down for you. He will chip away with you. He will do it however you need it. He will meet you where you're at. His love is powerful. His love is strong. And he is truthful and faithful to his word. So thank you so much for letting me share that. And because I really don't think I've shared that with more than one or two people in my life. But I really just want to encourage someone out there that please don't let anybody tell you an untruth. Don't let anyone tell you that God cannot do for you, because he can. And anything else is not the truth. Thanks so much, guys. I look forward to seeing people at church. C3 stand in Langford on Sunday. I think it's an all-in service, and there's food afterwards, so that's always a good thing too. Have a great evening, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.